What's up YouTube, Dal here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you an updated test hand combo video for the Red Dragon Archfiend Bystial version. If you are enjoying this type of content for the Red Dragon archetype, then please make sure you smash that like button. If you get this video above 50 likes in the first 24 hours, I will bring you an updated budget profile, because this guy right here has rocketed through the roof to £30 a copy. So I'm going to show you a build that will be utilised without using this guy and still be as devastating as ever. So, with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. With all of that out of the way, after a very decent shuffle and a good old cut, what we'll do is 2 test hands going first and 2 going second, starting with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That hand is broken. Now, obviously, in the budget version, you won't play Pot of Prosperity, which means you won't even need to utilize it. But with this hand, we're in a very, very good position. Now, you do need to keep in mind stuff like Drolls. Drolls sometimes will be in the main. If your local environment is maining them, then you might want to look at other different options. But even then, because we've opened up our Soul Resonator, you can still get going without needing to utilize so many cards. You'll want as much defensive capabilities as possible, but if you do get Drolled, just being able to activate Resonators to search out the Bone Archfiend will give you that ability to build a reasonably decent board. That being said, we're just going to be able to push as far forward as we possibly can, and we do have great cards in order to do that for us. Now, you can start off by using your Soul Resonator. It could very well be ashed. You could very easily activate Resonator Call and try and bait out that ash, because your opponent might be like, oh, they're trying to get to the Soul Resonator, stop it, and then you're good to rock and roll. If your Resonator Call resolves, of course, the one you're going to want to go to is your Crimson Resonator. Now, in this particular scenario, you've got 2 options here. You can special summon down your Crimson Resonator and then normal summon out the Soul Resonator, moving your plays forward, leaving Crimson on the board. Or you can keep Crimson in the hand and send it from the hand to the graveyard with your Bone Archfiend, and that means Bone Archfiend can then send an additional card. So you've got so many different options for you to play around with. Now, I'm going to leave Pot of Prosperity until the end to see if it can help me dig for a more of a control card, which means I'm going to keep the Crimson Resonator in the hand because I want to keep Wandering Wild King as a free extender, and I want to use Druid Swarm as a form of interruption during my opponent's turn. So we'll start off with the Soul Resonator. We're going to use this effect to search you out your Bone Archfiend. And the reason we're doing it this way is so that Bone Archfiend's effect can send the Crimson Resonator from the hand, meaning that it can then send from the deck to the graveyard instead is your Overloop. And that just means you've got an additional extension throughout certain plays to bring the Overloop back to the hand, bring it back to the board. And then just between Overloop and Wandering King, that's another level 8 synchro. So even if your opponent does Nibiru your board or stop your board because they try and drop it a little bit early, as long as you maintain a Resonator on the board, you'll be able to get Wandering Wild King down and Overloop. So you'll still be in a good position. So obviously we're going to manipulate our level of our Soul Resonator, making it level 2. We're going to sync these 2 together and go into our Red Rising. Red Rising's effect will then trigger to attempt to bring back your Crimson Resonator. Now, obviously, the issue with Crimson Resonator, and I would have much loved it to have been a fire, is it is a perfect target for a Bystial. So you do need to keep that in mind. On the resolution of all of this, because you control exactly 1 Dark Dragon, you can use the effect of Crimson to get you 2 from the deck. So the 2 you're definitely going to be going for, that 99.999% of the times you're going to be going for anyway, is going to be your Synchron Resonator and your Vision Resonator. The only times that you may change this is if you wanted to add a Red Resonator to the board, just to give you that life point stack if you've already opened up something like Vision Resonator, which can become a free extender. So at this point here, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to sync your Red Rising and your Vision. Doesn't matter if you use Vision or Crimson. If you use Vision now, you're going to get an additional extension play. It makes no much of a difference. So you're going to go straight into your Scarlet Dragon Archfiend. You're going to use Vision Resonator's effect here, and this is going to search you out either your Red Zone, your Crimson Gaia, or it can also search you out your red screen. So it really does depend on your particular type of play style. I'm actually going to go for red screen on this one just because I really do like how it's so blockage. Like, it literally just stops your opponent, and it means that even if they Dark Ruler your board, they can't get rid of it. Whereas with red zone, yes, you'll get 1 pop and you'll get to bring 1 back, but you do need a bit more setup for it. Whereas this one is just a great little blocker for your opponent to have to deal with. Overloop is obviously in the graveyard, don't know why it's in my hand. And then what you're going to want to do here is you can either synchro up into a 10, but I'm going to save that for later. I'm actually going to go synchro into a 9, and in doing so, this is going to give me access to my Abyss, which will now trigger both Scarred Dragon Archfiend and Synchron Resonator. Synchron Resonator lets you add Vision Resonator back to the hand, while Scarred also then allows you to spawn out a Red Dragon Archfiend. Now again, at this point, you're in a very good position because you still have the Overloop in the graveyard that you can utilize by banishing something like Scarred or Red Rising. It depends if you want an 8 or a 10 on the board as you end this. So let's go with Scarred just for now. Adding Overloop back to the hand. You will then be able to utilize the ability to synchro your Red Dragon Archfiend and your Crimson Resonator, and you're going to go into, wherever it may be, your Bystial Dispatter. Now, the reason you're going to go in this, because Dispatter's got the ability to destroy a card. Now, obviously, you want the ability to negate a card, which means you have to banish from your opponent's deck, which goes a little bit more difficult, but you still have ways to utilize it. In this point as well, you do also have the ability to special summon down your Vision Resonator. In doing so, you can special summon down your Wild King, and you can also banish one from the graveyard, being your Red Dragon Archfiend, to get you an Overloop. Now, the reason you would do this is if you want to get another Synchro level 8 on the board, but it really does come down to the type of build you are playing and the type of options that you have. Because at the moment, if we wanted to go for another Synchro level 8, the only one we really can go for is Scarred or a Scarlight. So it really is up to you. You can hold these back just so you've got crackbacks for the later on in the turn, meaning that your Red Dragon Archfiend stays in the graveyard. And you can use Bystial Dispatter to bring back your Scarred. Now, obviously, if you do get to something like Lubellion to an Entombed, then obviously being able to utilize both of these together during your opponent's turn will just give you so much more advantage. It's absolutely crazy. There are reasons to try and keep your Vision Resonator on the board, because then when it leaves the board during your opponent's turn, you will get another search to follow back up on. Again, it's entirely up to you on how you'd want to play and which playstyle you'd want to take. You also have the ability, should you want to bring down your Obsessive Overloop, just to make sure you've got a card that is banished that could be utilized. So probably leave Red Dragon in the graveyard, just in case you want to revive it later, and banish your Red Rising. Then what I would do here is I would synchro these two together and go into a Bane. I can then use Bane's effect to tribute off the Obsessive Overloop and bring back Scarred. So now I've got a monster that is Red Dragon Archfiend on the board that isn't going to attempt to nuke my board during the end phase. I've then also still got the ability to activate Pot Prosperity, banish any 6 you want, go for the top 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not so bad because we do actually control a Bystial, so Branded Beast is actually going to be live if you wanted to take that, and we do, because we've got the Druid Swarm, have the ability for Regained. I would personally, off of the back of this 6 Prosperity, take the Beast, because then what you can do is you can actually shuffle these up and then set 2. Your opponent knows both of them. If obviously you don't need to tell them that they're exactly what set, because technically they don't know that. You could have had more sets in the hand to set down. But as this currently stands, passing your board here, what you've got is you've got a negate off of the back of your Hot Red. You've got the ability of Bystial Dispatter to spin back either your Red Rising Dragon if you want to, or it can spin back any of the cards you choose to banish with your Pot of Prosperity. If your opponent tries to destroy your board, you've got the ability of your Soul Resonator to be banished from the graveyard to protect. You've also got your ability to Druid Swim, banishing any of your darks in the graveyard, being a Vision Resonator, Red Dragon Archfiend, Crimson Resonator, Synchron Resonator, or Bone Archfiend. And personally, what I would do is I would probably wait, because if your opponent doesn't know you have this, they'll probably know that you've taken Beast for the fact of Dispatter. But if your opponent doesn't know you have this, then what you've got the ability, or what you've got the one-up on them is, if they try and Bestial because they top deck 1 for turn, for example, to hit one of your cards, you chain your Druid Swarm as long as they've got a monster on the board to then banish it himself so that their one fizzles and your one hits the board. If that scenario plays out the way that we want it to, then what you do is you add to your board even more. So you've got your ability of the Branded Beast, which will allow you to pop 1, and if you send the Druid Swarm, you'll be allowed to send 1. You've got the negate off the Hot Red. You've got the pop off of the back of Bystial Dispatter by spinning back one of these two, but you also have the ability, if you spin back one of your opponents, to negate. On top of that as well, you've also got the red screen, and what you can do is during the end phase, you have to pay 1,000 life points, but you also have the ability to target a level 1 tuner in your graveyard, destroy this card, and if you do, special summon it. So you get to bring back your Synchron Resonator, destroying the red screen during the end phase, so you don't take 1,000 life points during your next end phase. And then what you do is you have the ability, going into your opponent's turn, synchro these into a second Abyss if you want to, and then trigger this Scarred's effect to bring out another Red Dragon Archfiend. So you basically upgrade your Scarred into an Abyss Dragon, and you'll have an Abyss, a Red Dragon Archfiend, a Hot Red Dragon Archfiend, a Bane, Dispatter, and another Abyss. So you're pretty much just going, boom, that is OTK then and done. So that's it for the first test hand. Very, like, some of the cards you didn't need to play, like, I didn't need to end my board on a Scard. I didn't need to end my board, like, I could have held back the Vision Resonator if I wanted to. I could have held back the Overloop as well. Keeping in mind you still have the Overloop in the graveyard. Like, you've just got so much more gas you can put through. And that's what makes the deck really cool and really aggressive, is that it just has such a small investment. And what I mean by that is literally you have so many cards that get you to your one card engine. The only issue with that is that the one card engine is susceptible to pretty much the main hand traps of the format. Imperm's not the biggest of issues, but it does hurt a little bit. Draw and Lockbird is probably the biggest issue, and Ash can be a bit of an annoyance. But pretty much like with Imperm and Ash, unless they hit your Red Rising and know exactly what to hit with it, you'll still be pretty good and able to extend even further later on anyway. So after another decent shuffle and a good old cut, our second test stand will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this is going to be something a little bit different because we've opened up the Synchron Resonator. But we've also opened up the Bone Archfiend, which is really cool, and we've opened up the red screen and Absolute Power Force. So these are technical bricks you don't want to see if they stop you getting to cards like this. But because you have such small investment windows, like I said, just one card gets you going and builds up your entire board, then you don't, it's not the end of the world if you do open these with a combination of something like this. It just means that you can now add to your end board red screen and your red zone as well. So you've just got so much more to play with. Okay, so with this particular hand here, of course, the main normal summon is, of course, going to be the Soul Resonator. If it gets stopped, it's not the end of the world because you do have targets you can send. Technically, you could send the Absolute Power Force. Like, in my opinion, this is probably the weakest card of the entire hand right now, unless you're going second and then red screens your weak target. So by normal summoning your Soul Resonator, you get to add a level 4 or lower Fiend monster from the deck to the hand. Now, you've got the ability to pretty much grab yourself a Vision Resonator if you want to. You can grab a Crimson Resonator if you want to. That just gives you the free send fodder off of the Bone Archfiend, which is why some people do like to search out the Crimson Resonator, because just being able to send it off of Bone Archfiend means that your Bone Archfiend, if it does get stopped to send a card, is not the end of the world. So it's one thing to remember as well. You can't special summon monsters from the extra deck the rest of the turn, but it's not a send, it's a send to the graveyard as a cost, which is really nice. So you get to use this effect, you send one other card from your hand or field to the graveyard as cost, so straight away Crimson gets to the graveyard regardless. It does lock you in. But the other one is you target, is your target as cost. So you target one face-up monster your opponent controls that has a level, that's your cost. So if they do imperm it or stop it, you can't send the Fiend Tuner from deck to the grave, which is why sometimes it's a little bit safer to get the Crimson Resonator to the hand, because then you guarantee to get it to the graveyard. And it's a lot harder for you to go Bone Archery in effect, sending Crimson Resonator as cost, for them to stop this. Whereas if you didn't have the Crimson Resonator and you searched out something else, and you were like, okay, cool, Bone Archfiend's effect, target, and they went imperm, ash, anything like that, you don't get the Crimson to the graveyard. So doing it this way, you're in a much better position. It does mean that they will save the Ash for the Crimson Resonator, but that is just give and take of how the game works. In doing so, you're going to activate the Bone Archfiend, and again, it's just another bait out. Like, literally, your opponent could have ashed the Soul Resonator, and you would be good to continue. They could have ashed this Bone Archfiend effect, but they're like, oh, you've already put a Crimson in the graveyard, like, what's the worst that they can put down? You go with an Overloop. If you are that worried about Bystial, you could very easily send a second Crimson Resonator, but even then, when you activate your Red Rising Dragon, it does target, I believe. So let me just double check this. When it seems like target a Resonator, yeah, it's a big sad that it targets, because then it means that they can just banish the target. Of course, you're going to go for Overloop. It's like the best one to send. So there you go, Overloop. You're going to pretty much do the exact same thing here. So sink into a 6, Red Rising triggers, brings back your Crimson. Now, obviously, this is something that's going to change because we've already opened up the Synchron Resonator. The best thing about Synchron Resonator is it technically has a free summon as long as you have a Synchron monster on the board. So when you activate the Crimson Resonator's effect, what you're going to want to do is you're going to be able to special summon basically a Vision Resonator. And this is where some people are like, yeah, but you play 2 Synchron Resonators or 2 Vision Resonators. It's like, yeah, of course you can. Like, there's no issue with that. I personally just like it as a minimum because I don't really want to see it in my hand. In doing so, I do get to a second Soul Resonator, which means I've got more destruction protection in the graveyard. It does make the levels a little bit awkward because a level 3 Resonator does make it a little bit more difficult to kind of sync up and get everywhere you need to, but you still basically end your same board and you use your Soul Resonator as your tribute fodder for something like Bane if you want to as well. So again, in the scenario that we're currently looking at, we're going to sink into an 8 using the Vision Resonator. The only benefit of doing Crimson Resonator and then sinking into a 10 with your Scarred and Vision is that you get the ability to chain block your Vision, because you can go Chain Link 1 Vision, Chain Link 2 Scarred, meaning that they can't Ash your Vision. But if they've got an Ash Blossom and you've got to this point here, chances are they're not going to Ash your Vision. Just keep that in mind. Vision's effect's going to trigger. Now, I could go for a Crimson Gyre if I want to, but honestly, I'm just going to go for full out back row blowout, to be honest. So you've got yourself a red zone. You then sync these up into a 10. Of course, ideally the 10 you're going to want to go to more times than not is going to be your Bystial Dispatter. I'm just showing you this a different way around. You could, of course, very easily use your Synchron Resonator and get Abyss first. It doesn't make much of a difference either way. Of course, you're going to trigger your Scarred effect. This is going to give you your Red Dragon Archfiend. And then, of course, at this position here, this is where you can also just jump straight into a Abyss, because you've got... not an Abyss, sorry. You can jump into an Abyss because you just go, cool, Special Summon down, Synchron Resonator, Sync. There's your 9, there's your Abyss, right? You still then also have the ability of Overloop in the graveyard. Now, this is the other way you could do it as well, is Overloop, technically, could banish your Red Rising. So let's just rewind this a little bit. So we've got a Red Dragon Archfiend, and we'll keep the... it doesn't matter, you can put this on the board here. So if you wanted to go for 2 Abysses, for example, you would banish this to add back the Overloop. Then you use Dispatter's effect to bring this back. And then you can sync your Red Rising with your Soul Resonator because it's just an awkward level. And this would then get you into an Abyss as well. Wherever I've put Abyss, if I just put it in the graveyard, I bet I have. Yeah, I did. There we go. So then you can make your Abyss there. Then you can make a second Abyss here if you wanted to. Or you could hold back your Synchron Resonator. It really depends on your type of playstyle and how far you want to push it. If you wanted to get the add back from your Synchron Resonator, which you don't need to do, then of course you would do this a little bit differently. And again, rewinding the state a little bit, let's just put it like this. This is when you can, of course, go, all right, well, Overloop, instead of banishing, we'll banish Scarred. And then I'll use Dispatter to bring back the Scarred, and then we'll synchro these two together, go into an Abyss, effect. Effective Synchron Resonator in the graveyard, add back your Vision Resonator, and then it's all about if you want to maintain some more resource. Now, of course, this is a bit of an awkward level because this is going up to a level 11, not a 12, so it doesn't really help you go that much further. But what you're doing here, if you were to end your board here, of course, you could use Overloop's effect in the graveyard to summon itself down, just so you have a card banished for your Bystial Dispatter. But what you're doing here is you're setting a red zone, setting a red screen, and you've got the ability. So when your opponent activates a card or effect while you control Red Dragon Archfiend, which you do, or a Synchro monster that mentions it, you get to target a card on the field and destroy it. You also get to target one of your banished Dark Dragon Synchro monsters and special summon it back. Now, obviously, that's going to be a little bit more difficult if you've put Overloop on the board, unless you're going to put Dispatter into the extra monster zone. So again, you just need to adapt your levels of how you want to do it, and it depends if you want to control more monsters, have more monsters on the board for protection in case they try and Dark Ruler you, but then, of course, you are running into stuff like evenly matched. If they go Dark Ruler and then evenly, you pretty much lose your entire board. I would probably still keep the red screen, but even then they're not going to be attacking. So you still got a lot to play with. You still got to keep your keep focused on what you're going to be doing, and that just gives you a different couple of options. So that was just 2 very consistent hands going first. Like I said, what I'm trying to show you in this second test hand, and I apologise if it does get a little bit confusing, is I'm just trying to show you that all your play routes will start off the same. They will pretty much end the same. It's just the middle that is different. So you need to kind of keep in mind, like, what happens if I get interrupted. Now, if you get interrupted on a single card combo, like your top deck and you got one card and they imperm you or stop you, that's going to be the exact same for any deck you play in the entire game. If they interrupt your top deck of 1 card, you're in trouble. But if they are trying to interrupt and you've got a full hand of 5, then you're in a different position because you just need to know, okay, well, if my Soul Resonator gets stopped here, I've already opened up Bone Archfiend, I'm in a good position. There is no point where you shouldn't really activate a card effect unless you are worried that they're going to destroy it. Then it leaves the board and then you're in a bit of trouble. So anyway, shuffle, cut, go in second now. So that will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not bad. And then 6. Now, if you feel that you would have already used your Ball Drake, like if your opponent's put a light or dark in the graveyard, then of course you would have already summoned down the Ball Drake. But you want to be a little bit careful on this one. If there is no need to banish the card in the graveyard, so unless you're playing against tier elements, if there's no need to banish it, don't do it, because then you just give them the ability of activating talents, Frost, and then Frost can then activate talents and look at your hand and you're like, okay. So, with a hand like this, what we can do is we can Activate Resonator, cool. You don't need to. You could activate Crimson Gaia if you want to. Entirely up to you. But Crimson Gaia is going to give you the ability to add a card that mentions Red Dragon Archfiend from the deck to the hand. So you could activate your Crimson Gaia to get you anything you want to, but we're going to start off with Resonator, cool. Of course, this one is going to give you your Crimson Resonator. Then, of course, that goes bye-bye. Then you can activate your Crimson Gaia. Now, keeping in mind what Crimson Gaia can actually get you is it can get you to an absolute power force, which is the idea behind the play you're going to try and make here is to push for an OTK. And your Bystials are definitely going to help you do that. Obviously, it'd be a little bit more ideal if this was something like a Druid Swarm or a Lubellion or a Saronir, something like that. But you're still in a good position because of Regained as well. So it's up to you what you want to search off of the back of the Crimson Gaia. You can pretty much search out anything you want. Now, we've opened up Synchron Resonator again, but it's not the end of the world. If you take the Vision Resonator, it means the Crimson Resonator play that you'd go for here is completely dead in this version because we don't play twos of them. But honestly, I don't know why you would go for something like that. I would probably just go directly for an absolute power force. Even though, yes, I could search this off of a Vision Resonator later on in the combo, I can also choose to search out a trap card to protect me going forward. So, normal summon the Soul Resonator. Soul Resonator's effect is going to trigger. This is going to allow you to add Bone Archfiend. It's just the one you always want to go for. Yes, of course, I could special summon down the Crimson Resonator, but I just feel that it causes more issues than actually helps you. So, Bone Archfiend, send Crimson Resonator. Obviously, you know the benefits of doing it from the hand now because it means it can't get stopped. Then going to use the effect of Bone Archfiend. This is going to send your Assessive Overloop, wherever it may be. Overloop being an Earth, very, very nice. Can then sync these two together, go into a Red Rising. Now you could do, if you really, really wanted to, is you could actually manipulate the level and you could try and go into a, different level if you wanted to, but Red Rising is the ideal one to go for. You could like choose not to manipulate their levels, which means you don't need to send the Assessive Overloop and go into the level 7, but you want to go as far as possible. So we're going to do these here. You're going to bring back your Crimson Resonator off of your Red Rising. And again, it's not the end of the world. If your opponent stops your Red Rising, you still have the ability to special summon down your Synchron Resonator, and then you've got the ability to still sync with your Red Rising plus your Crimson into the level 7. Pop cards, do what you need to. But again, Crimson Resonator's effect, we're going to go with Soul Resonator, and we're going to go with our Vision Resonator, wherever it may be. Vision Resonator, there we go. You've still got Obsessive Overloop in the graveyard, but you haven't put anything on the board yet. So we'll do this a little bit differently. Let's go with those two into a Scarred. And then what we want to do is sync your Scarred with your Vision and go into a 10. Now we're going to be aggressive here. So let's go with Dispatter. In doing so, you can go Chaining 1 Vision, Chaining 2 Scarred. Not only that, but Scarred will also nuke your opponent's board of the attack position monsters, while Vision lets you add. Now Vision can pretty much add you a protection for the next turn, or just free discard fodder. It's entirely up to you. So now that it currently sits like this, we've got the ability to special summon down our Synchron Resonator. You can sync these together if you want to, which is absolutely fine because you can bring back the your Red Dragon later on. So you're going to use Synchron's effect. This is going to allow itself to add you a Vision back to the hand. And then what you do here is you can use Bystial, not Bystial, Dispatter, sorry. We're going to use Obsessive Overloop, add this back to the hand. Because we want to clear the board off, we're going to banish the Red Dragon Archfiend. Then what you can do here is you can special summon down the Vision Resonator. We're going to activate our Branded Regained. And the reason we're going to do that is we're going to activate Bystial Balldrake. We're going to banish our Synchron Resonator because I want that back in the deck. We use Regained effect to put Synchron Resonator back into the deck. And we're going to draw a card. Boom. Okay, fine. Yeah, I mean, it happens. The reason you're going to do that is you're going to sync these into another 8. This is going to be a Scarred because Scarlight because we're going to go second. And then, of course, you use Bystial Dispatter, bring back your Red Dragon Archfiend. Now, of course, there's different ways of going around this. You could very easily have summoned down the Vision Resonator and then synchroed with the level 8. Brought back this one first, synchroed into a 10. Entirely up to you. We've maintained a bit more resource, but literally just going into the battle phase, you've got so many different effects. So you've got the effect of your Red Dragon Archfiend to destroy all defense position monsters when it destroys one by battle in defense. You also get the ability that when your Red Dragon Archfiend declares an attack, you change all of the opponent's monsters to face down defense position. And then if a monster on the field is destroyed by a battle or card effect, you get to special on a Red Dragon Archfiend from the graveyard. So technically, if you put Scarlight into the extra monster zone, What you're doing is you declare an attack with your Red Dragon Archfiend. Everything gets shift to defense. You activate Absolute Power Force, which means you're going to get 1,000 attacks, so it goes up to 4,000. It's going to be able to attack defensive monsters, inflicting piercing battle damage. And then when one of them gets destroyed, all of them gets destroyed, and then it gets to bring back a Red Dragon from the graveyard, which of course is going to be your Scarred. And then the rest of this is pretty much game. If there's anything that doesn't finish off game, let's just say they survive on, I don't know, some sort of life points, you can very easily go, okay, cool, Scarred's effect, this will then blow up your, Scarlight's effect will blow up Scarred, and it will blow up your Soul Resonator. And I believe, is this 1,000 attack? I think this is 1,000 attack until the end of the damage step. So this will still be 3k, and you'd also destroy this. You'd then burn your opponent for 1,500. So, and then should they still survive that by, I don't know how, you've obviously got your red screen to go, and then just to make sure you've got a card banished for Bystial Dispatter, you can obviously banish one for Overloop. Now, not that you would need to do that. There's chances are you've probably got more cards banished or your opponent's got more cards banished. It just kind of shows you that the deck can be very, very aggressive as well, which is really, really nice. Cool. So we'll do one final test then. We'll go second. Hopefully, Synchron Resonator will stay out of my hand this time. It seems to absolutely love it. So, which don't get me wrong, it works quite nicely because if my opponent stops stuff, as long as I can get to a Synchro, I get that extension, which is awesome. So we'll shuffle this up. We'll do another decent cut. And then we'll do a final test hand, going second, starting with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, as you do. So Regain can still be actually quite useful for us because it can get us that nice little draw because we're going to be able to banish cards. You just need to be able to be happy with what you're going to be putting back of those banished cards. The exact same combo can be done here, like pretty much the same. Resonator Call, give you Crimson Resonator. I mean, the consistency of this deck is mad. Special summon down the Crimson Resonator if you want to. We're not going to do that. Activate Crimson Gaia. Crimson Gaia can then add. Now, luckily, Synchron Resonator stayed out of my blooming hand, so I'm going to go for Power Force just because I want to complete the OTK. So we're going to normal summon Soul. Soul's effect gives me Bone. Bone, da do. Archfiend's effect, send Crimson. Again, just that if you're like watching parts of this video, the benefit of sending the Crimson Resonator from hand rather than relying on the on-field effect of Bone Archfiend to send Crimson Resonator is, number one, from hand is as cost, so they can't stop it. Number two, they can't imperm Ash this card in the hand because its effect is not sending from deck to the graveyard until it hits the board. When it's on the board, it doesn't send as effect, it targets as cost, which means if your opponent ashes it or stops it, it does not hit the graveyard. So we use Bone Archfiend's effect. Again, we're going to send the Overloop. Like, Overloop's crazy good in this deck. We'll activate the Regained so that we're pretty much set up if your opponent does try and Bystial us, then we'll still get a bit of an advantage from it. And then, of course, you're going to Sync. Stop me if you've seen this one before. Sync is going to go into Rising. Rising is going to bring back your Resonator. Yes, all of you watching out there, this is the weak spot. This is, like, if you destroy the Red Rising, negate and destroy, it does get a lot more difficult because you've invested a card into it, you've used your normal summon, you do need some form of additional extension. And the issue with this particular line of play is that you can't extend further before you make this card. Because if you add just one more card to this board, Crimson Resonator's effect is, can't do it. So at this point, Crimson Resonator, we're finally going to be able to get Vision Resonator and Synchron Resonator out of the deck. Yay! And then of course we're going to get more advantage off the back of that as well. Now again, it's entirely up to you on which type of route of play you'd like to go. Now keeping in mind, at this exact standpoint or exact moment in time, okay, if I wanted to, you could choose to play this completely differently. So just for the sake of this video, I'm going to show you a different route. I'm not saying it is the best route to go, but just as an example of this route. Rather than summoning out Vision Resonator, we are deliberately going to summon out our Soul Resonator. And the reason we're going to do this is we're going to sync for a 7. In doing so, this is going to allow us to get out, and I'm going to show you the usage of Coolie Belt. In doing so, if this card is synchro summoned, you get the target card on the field and destroy it. So Chain Link 1, Coolie Belt. Chain Link 2 will be Synchron Resonator. This can then let you add back a Resonator monster from the graveyard. So this will allow you to add back the Soul Resonator. You might want to keep this in the graveyard because it does have that destruction effect if your opponent tries to do anything, but we're going to go on the assumption that they don't. Then what you've got is you've got the ability that if this card on the field is destroyed, you get to target a face-up monster on the field and destroy it. That monster cannot attack until the end of the turn. So this gives you the ability just to go, okay, cool, sync straight into a 10 Bystial Dispatter. Now the reason you're going to want to go for Dispatter on this one is we're going to use the effect of Overloop. Overloop will then, wherever it may be, there we go. Overloop will add itself back to the hand by banishing the Red Rising. We will then use the effect of Dispatter to bring back the Red Rising. You can then sync your Red Rising and your Crimson Resonator together, and this is going to get you into Scarred. Now, of course, we're in a little bit of a different setup because we've done this quite differently. What you could do, and what I probably should have done, is while the board state looks like this, special summon down your Wandering Wild King. And then you've got the ability, let me just double check how we want to do this. So, yeah, I'm getting to 2/8 quite nicely actually. So then what you do here is you can then synchro your Crimson with your Red Rising into a Scarred. Then you're also going to use the Overloops effect in the hand to banish your Red Rising again. In doing so, or your Cully Belt actually, Cully Belt's probably better because we can loop that back. Banish the Cully Belt, this is going to go back into the extra deck off of the back of Regained and we're going to draw a card. Okay. And then what we've got the ability for is you can just synchro into an 8. Synchro into the 8. We're just going to hard make the Red Dragon Archfiend. I don't think there's really a way for us to get into the 12 of in this scenario to get the Scarred off the board to cheat out the Red Dragon Archfiend. Yes, it's a bit of a shame because you won't be able to destroy all your opponent's attack position monsters. But again, because you've got the absolute power force, you still have the ability to go that bit further. So what I mean by that is you can go to the battle phase. I really do want to bring back a Red Dragon Archfiend from the graveyard because then we get more off the Gaia. But either way, so you go to the battle phase, you'd activate Absolute Power Force, you use Crimson Gaia, switch everything to defense. This is going to do piercing battle damage, shift everything to defense. So at the very least, as long as you do 1500 damage, you'll guarantee game with the rest of this. Because Red Dragon Archfiend attacks, destroys all your opponent's defense position monsters, apart from, unfortunately, if your opponent's got link monsters, then it does get a little bit differently. Then your Scarred would go in for 3k, this would go in for 3500. Now, that's not the way that I would choose to play that hand. Obviously, keep in mind as well, the Cully Belt would have got rid of a link monster if that was an issue. This isn't the route I would have played this hand. I would have gone down the exact same combo route. Maybe, instead of going for a Bane, I would have gone for a Neversoul Dragon. But again, this was just something else to show you that if you wanted to do it a little bit differently, if you wanted to use Cully Belt, if you wanted to pop more cards before you invested into the board, that's one way of doing it. So, yeah. I wanted to show you something a little bit different on the last test stand just because I could. Otherwise, it would just be 4 test stands that are exactly the same. Which is great when you want to question the consistency of a deck like this, but it's also something to keep in mind. Anyway, I hope this video has been informative. I hope it's given you kind of like a bit of an insight into the deck and the way it works and just different kind of options that you have. Yes, every build of this deck is similar, but very different as well. It's like the playstyles are different. Some people play the Bystial, some people play 2 Visions, 2 Synchrons, you name it. I quite like adapting with the deck, changing around with it, seeing what else I can do. But like I said at the start of the video, if you want to see an updated budget profile for this deck, then get this video above 50 likes and I'll be more than happy to bring it for you. But for now, as absolutely always, stay safe and of course, happy dueling.